So if we look here in verse 14, he says this, stand firm there with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Pray also for me that whenever I speak, words may be given me so that I shall fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. Now, as I said before, so we have this list here, but as I said before, in verse 11, it's an active verb, meaning we should always be putting on the full armor of God. I think one of the major deceptions that we wrestle with, that we deal with, is the idea of that we're not enough. I've mentioned this before, and it's not that I'm down on social media per se, but it's interesting because in 2013, if you look at the studies, in 2013, teen depression and suicide went up like 40%. Now, correlation is not always causation, right? But in 2013, Facebook moved to phones. And the number of teens that began to use Facebook went through the roof. And if you know anything about Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, no one takes like the picture of their life on the worst day of their life. You know? No one takes a picture and said, just raged at my kid, like their kid's just like screaming in the background. Just raged super hard on my kid, bad parenthood, and puts that on Instagram, right? No one takes a picture of the dishes that all got shoved in the sink and goes, I was too lazy to do that. I ate bonbons and watched Netflix instead. Right? What's on Facebook? Look at our newly remodeled kitchen with our perfectly dressed children modeling somehow. Right? Look at all that. Look at all these great things. That's what's on there. Right? So what does that generate? It generates comparison. Right? As soon as, because we're selfish, we're just, that's every aspect of our life we relate to, how does that affect me? Right? So you see something like that and you go, oh, their family's perfect. And maybe it is. That's not really none of our business. They somehow made it our business, but whatever. It's really none of our business. Maybe they are perfect, but what's that to us? And so when you generate comparison, all of a sudden it generates like a jealousy, a fear, a hopelessness, like all this stuff can come of it, right? So when we're looking at what Satan does, he always deceives. So sometimes we might look at this, especially if you just kind of see the model of like Christian t-shirts and things like that, where it's just like this raw kind of like, I don't know, excessively like, warrior spirit or something like that. When in reality, that armor was built and it was used in the Roman army to be used with others, and you didn't have to be the best and the brightest and the strongest to use it. In other words, the armor could be used for darn near every Roman soldier, except left-handed people. Because of the way the shield and the sword works, you had to be right-handed. Because if you have everyone in a line stabbing people in the groin from behind their shield with their right hand, and you're over there with your left hand, not going to work so hot. So my illustration fails there. But for everyone else, anyone can wear the armor. So I've been debating about this because I don't really like extending. I don't want to make big points out of a metaphor, but Paul started it, so I'd like to continue. This is a book. It's translated out of Latin, but it's called De Re Militari. And it is a treatise that was written in 390, which is 320 years after this. But it's a treatise that was written by a Roman legionnaire in 390 AD. And it's his commentary that he basically wrote this for Emperor Valentinian. And it's a treatise on why the Romans were so successful in their military endeavors. And I think it's really interesting, and I think it really plays well into the metaphor that Paul's using. This is clearly, let me just say this is clearly about Roman armor. In fact, because one of the reasons A, Rome is the known world, B, because the word that he uses for shield was a specific Roman military term for the Roman legionnaire shield. So he's talking about Roman armor. So this is his commentary. He says, achieving victory in war does not depend entirely upon numbers or simple courage. Only skill and discipline will ensure it. We find that the Romans owed the conquest of the world to no other cause other than continuous military training, exact observance of discipline in their camps, and unwearied cultivation of the other arts of war. Without these, what chance would the inconsiderable numbers of the Roman armies have had against the multitudes of the Gauls? Or with what success would their small size have been opposed to the prodigious height of the Germans? The Spaniards suppressed us not only in numbers, but also in physical strength, and we were always inferior to the Africans in wealth and unequal to them in deception and in stratagem. And the Greeks indisputably were far superior to us in skill, in arts, and all kinds of knowledge. But to all these advantages, the Romans opposed unusual care in the choice of their levies and in their military training. They thoroughly understood the importance of hardening them by continual practice and of training them to every maneuver that might happen in the line and in action. Nor were they less strict in punishing idleness and sloth. The courage of a soldier is heightened by the knowledge of his profession, and he only wants an opportunity to execute what he is convinced he has been perfectly taught. A handful of men accustomed to war proceed to certain victory, while on the contrary, numerous armies of raw and undisciplined troops are but multitudes of men dragged to a slaughter. It's pretty wild, because you would think, based on how most emperors were, that he would have said, we were physically superior. We had the best stuff. We had the best strategies. No one could beat us. Instead, he says what? The Germans were taller. The Greeks were just better at everything. The Africans were faster, and they had better strategies than we did. So in the Gauls, he said our numbers were inconsiderable to the numbers of the Gauls. So he goes through all these. The Spaniards were just stronger physically. So he goes through this whole thing. The guys that used this armor and were victorious with it, he goes through the whole thing and he says, do you know why the Romans were able to defeat every foe? Because they practiced. They practiced. They wore their armor all the time. They worked together all the time. They drilled and they drilled and they drilled and they drilled. Now, are we moving to a works-based gospel? No. We're just pointing out that even in this example of armor, in a nation that dominated the entire world, that an honest legionnaire was willing to write to Valentinian and to say, this is not because we're better. We're not super strong. We're small people. It's because we practiced. That's why we could defeat everyone. And so this armor that we read about, this armor that we have, that's what it was meant to do. Number one, and we'll get there, but if you look at the shield, this shield is not like a Viking shield, a wooden round shield. It's very fast. The shield is not like many of the Saxon armies. If you look at 1200, these things, the shield wasn't like that. 900 AD, the Saxon armies and the shields they used. It wasn't the shields of the Greeks, if you looked at the shields they used. This shield was massive. It's like 4 feet tall by 2 feet wide. And it's heavy. It's got a steel bulb in the front of it. And that's what the reason it's bulbous right there is where they would hold it. So it wasn't good for individual combat. It's too big, it's too heavy. You couldn't move it around like you could another shield. That shield was meant and designed to interlock with other people's shields to develop a shield wall. So this armor, this thing, and the way this came to victory, it came to being with each other and practicing over and over and over again. So in Paul, in Acts 11, it's not wasted where he uses a present active and he says, the idea is always be putting on the armor of God. Always be doing it. Never falter at doing it. Never think you can retreat from it. Never think it's not needful. Oh, not paranoia. We're not trying to develop paranoia here, right? We talked about that last week. Yes, Satan is mighty, but greater is he that is in us than he that is in this world. All right, so that we're not generating any fear here, like, oh no. But what we are generating is how do we move forward? How do we stand? And the whole point of this passage is if you want to stand, if you want to be able to resist being deceived, you have to do this. It's why it's an imperative in Greek. It's an order. You have to do this. It's not to become righteous, right? That was with Christ. But it's to walk with him.